books. So if you find the book called the Lorenz Brerin book, on page number 354, you will find a list of our direct family members on our Rolf's bloodline. And this isn't that far back. This is only 3 to 4 generations back from myself, from my current generation. So it says in the book, and it shows what descendants are named to have been illegitimately conceived. So you have something called legitimate marriage and illegitimate marriage and union. We don't know how many other people he sired illegitimately, but what it is that if someone is illegitimate, they would claim the child, but the child would be recorded as illegitimate. And they did claim the child as illegitimate by the king's orders and the king's command. So if you look up an oil painting of what King Christian VIII looked like, he looks exactly like me. I have his ears, I have his nose and chin, I have his cheekbones. In other words, I look exactly like him. I'm a spitting image of the King of Denmark, Christian VIII. And the way that we can prove that, in addition to my face and my looks, the way that we can prove it on paper is by tracing it from parent to parent by using valid and certified documentation. So my birth certificate shows who my parents are, and their birth certificates show who their parents are, and etc. by using census records, and you trace the records all the way back to the island of Thea and Amron and Zilt in the Frisian Islands, and then you match up the records to their property records and their immigration records of when they came to the U.S. And you'll find that there are other newspaper clippings and etc. further proving that they lived down the road. And then you will find the books that the king demanded to be written about. So that's the way that we can prove it, in addition to my face and my ears and teeth. So we can prove that we are illegitimate from the King of Denmark and Norway, Christian VIII. Christian VIII, we were told by the royal family that Christian VIII was a schizophrenic, and he also had multiple personality disorder. We know a lot about Christian VIII, and my other relatives know a lot about Christian VIII because we were told by them. And another relative had actually gone to Germany and spoken with them over there. So we are illegitimate, and I think they said that we can't really get anything out of it, but we're looking for more acknowledgement, you know? So let's see. What happened after that was that the Kingdom of Denmark was actually on the brink of poverty, and they ended up funding some stuff in what became like the U.S. Well, what became that era after the U.S. and the colonies and stuff were formed. I mean, we're talking like mid to late 19th century. So it was on the brink of poverty, and there were really no goods flowing into Denmark or the Frisian Islands, and people left in troves. They left the islands and they immigrated to the U.S. So my Rolf's ancestors, being my great-great-grandmother, came to the U.S. and they settled in Missouri. So Christian VIII, the King of Denmark and Norway, is actually my great-great-grandfather by blood. And they started several towns in Missouri, and they started a post office there, where they then started the original School of Mines. So they started it and they taught it. They taught in the School of Mines in Missouri, and they contributed a lot of things to the formation of Missouri State and the town named Clementine in Missouri. They started the town named Clementine in Missouri. And after that, they ended up moving to, some of the family ended up moving to Oklahoma, but it was actually called Indian Territory when they moved to that, and they were given land grants in something called the Sooner Land Rush. The Sooner Land Rush was a land grab that was given to families before the Oklahoma Land Rush, and then they started towns in Oklahoma. And ultimately, they lost a lot of their property and farms in the Dust Bowl, and they ended up moving to Bakersfield, California, and Los Angeles, California, as well as 2 different places in California. So that's the story on that.
All right. So what happened was, well, my maternal family is Scandinavian, and our people directly come from Denmark and Norway and Western Germany. No Eastern German, only Western, and Northern Frisia and Western Frisia. And they lived on a place called the Frisian Islands, and it's a collection of islands off of the coast of Western Germany, Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands. And they lived down the road from the Danish king Christian VIII and Frederick VII, right? And he owned a property there where he would go there in the summertime, and they would do something which was called like old-fashioned windsurfing, and they would do more than that, but we know that we directly come from Christian VIII, the King of Denmark and Norway, Christian VIII, because in a book he said that my great-great-grandmother was very pretty, a very beautiful woman, and he elevated her, and he was with her. And we can prove from parent to parent that that's my great-great-grandmother by using birth certificates, census records, and other kinds of like valid documentation. And if you look up an oil painting of what Christian VIII looked like, you'll see that he looked exactly like me. He looks exactly like me, actually. He even has the same ears. I have the exact same ears as him, same nose, the same chin, roughly the same nose, the same chin, the same cheekbones. I have the exact head of King Christian VIII of Denmark and Norway. And usually you can tell if people are related by looking at the teeth and the ears. If people are related, they'll have the same teeth and the ears. That's just anthropology 101. So this actually means that the current monarch of Denmark, who is Queen Margaret II, is our blood cousin, probably about our third blood cousin, and whoever is the monarch of Denmark is also the leader of the Lutheran Church. So that's what happened. But the Frisian people are actually a very rare people, and they were highly sought after for marriage because they were considered the most pure and the fairest skinned and the most beautiful out of everybody in the world. Just a matter of taste, I guess, but that's what they said back in the day in all the books. And they spoke a minority language, which is called the Frisian language. So only about 10,000 people today speak Northern Frisian, where most everybody else that speaks Frisian speaks Western Frisian. and Norwegian. We are Frisian. We are Western German. My mother was a flower girl. She delivered flowers to people. I used to go with her all of the time as a child to deliver flowers to people. I think I was 13 or 14 years old when the government tried to take me away from my family and make it to where we couldn't prove that we were related. They tried to take me away from them, and I remember they put me down on the border of Mexico and California, and I remember running away from that place and coming back here. But they kept trying to make it to where they would take me away from my NLR family. And then, I don't know how far back it goes, but I remember we ate food from a military base because this was way before that, and because a relative joined the military. And this is why I think that it was some kind of like a government operation or something, where I had like a lookalike in the military who was using my identity information, in addition to others that look like me using my identity information. But I remember there was like a shootout in Mexico, because there was like some kind of a, not in Mexico actually, well, one in Mexico and one in Southern California, between the NLR and another group. And then I remember like my mother and my family being in like shootouts with the cartel and stuff later on after that. But they don't seem to. Well, the enemy likes to make their opponent look bad, and the enemy usually tries to wipe out the historical facts, the true historical events and facts, especially in war. In war, the winning group usually rewrites the history of the vanquished. And the true history and facts are hidden away. So it's important to document who you are and who you come from, and document the developments of war and conflict, so that nothing can be hidden or disappeared from anybody's view. Unfortunately, I don't believe that it was my destiny or path
to have encountered